Reincarnated to reforge the world, how the strongest sage defied destiny, mastered the weakest Crest, and led humanity's reawakening against the ancient Demonoid threat to rebuild magic, inspire generations, and prove that true power lies not in marks or fate, but in knowledge, will, and relentless resolve to protect. In a distant age, within a world shaped by crests that determined a person's magical potential, one man stood alone at the summit of magical prowess. He was known as the world's strongest sage, a genius whose very name evoked awe and reverence. His abilities, nurtured through decades of tireless study and combat, had pushed the boundaries of magic to unfathomable heights. He possessed the first crest, also known as the Crest of Close Combat, a mark esteemed in his time for its balance between offense and defense. With it, he had vanquished monsters, dismantled forbidden magic, and safeguarded the world against catastrophic forces. Yet, in his brilliance, he recognized a ceiling, a point beyond which his own growth had stagnated. Even with unmatched power, he remained chained by the nature of his crest. He craved a form better suited for pure magic enhancement, something beyond what fate had handed him. Rather than resigning himself to limitations, the sage made a decision that would unsettle the fabric of destiny. Through a forbidden reincarnation spell, he cast away his life, scattering his essence across time, choosing to be reborn in a future where he hoped to acquire the fourth crest, the mark he had studied and deemed most capable of harnessing the full range of magical theory. With his final act, he entrusted his hopes to the winds of time, seeking a new vessel that could rise even higher than he had in his current life. He was reborn as Matthias Hildesheimer, the third son of a noble family in a distant future. At birth, his parents looked upon the crest he bore, a curved, intricate symbol etched in light on his hand, with concern and mild disappointment. In this era, the fourth crest had come to be known not as a gift, but as a curse, derisively called the Crest of Failure. Society viewed it as a weak and impractical mark, unsuited for real magic or combat. But Matthias, retaining the memories and soul of his past life, recognized it immediately as the one he had yearned for, a crest of extraordinary potential for pure magic amplification. From his earliest years, Matthias wasted no time. The world he awoke into was not the one he remembered. Magic had regressed, descending into superstition and fragmented theory. The ancient arts were lost. The once mighty nations had softened. Enchantments were clumsy, inefficient, and built upon flawed logic. Magic schools taught methods that were fundamentally broken. Scholars revered incantations that were slow and imprecise. Matthias, both amused and alarmed, realized that he had arrived not in a future of glory, but in one of decay. But he also saw an opportunity, a vacuum of knowledge he could fill. He trained with discipline and insight, reclaiming techniques that had not been seen for thousands of years. Using the Crest of Failure, he strengthened his magical circuits to absurd levels, performing feats the world no longer understood. He fused his combat skills with advanced sorcery, making his attacks more efficient and devastating. He practiced without cease, balancing swordplay with spellwork until both merged into a seamless art. When the time came, he traveled to the capital to enroll in the Second Royal Academy, a school dedicated to nurturing magical talent. The academy placed great emphasis on crest classification. Those with the third crest, the Crest of Magic Craft, were praised and prioritized. The second crest, the Crest of Spell Formation, earned a stable reputation, and the first crest, once considered elite, had become rare and misunderstood. But Matthias, bearing the reviled fourth crest, was treated with disdain from the outset. During his entrance exam, Matthias stunned the evaluators. In a test where candidates were expected to break a training dummy or cast basic offensive spells, he shattered the target with a blade of light conjured in an instant. His precision and raw power defied the expectations of instructors and students alike. Those watching suspected trickery. The academy, unsure of how to respond, accepted him reluctantly. Among his peers, Matthias stood out. He was not just faster or stronger. He moved like a warrior who had trained for centuries, weaving through magical duels as though they were child's play. Despite his excellence, ridicule followed him. Most were too blind to accept that someone with the Failure Crest could wield such dominance. Within the academy, he met two girls, Luri, a calm and diligent sword user, and Alma, an archer with strong instincts but unpolished techniques. Both possessed potential but lacked proper instruction. They, too, had suffered under the flawed magical doctrine of their time. Matthias saw in them reflections of what this world had lost. A raw but smothered spark. He offered to train them not for glory or companionship, but because he knew the future would demand more than he alone could offer. Under his guidance, Luri refined her blade techniques and incorporated rune-enhanced strikes. Alma learned to channel mana into her arrows, striking with explosive precision and layered enchantments. Their progress was rapid, unnatural by the standards of the day. Matthias, ever focused, kept pushing them toward what he knew would come, an era of chaos and monsters the world had forgotten. For a while, the people remained blind to the signs. Matthias sensed it. The appearance of monsters in organized formations, the sudden rise in magical anomalies, the whispers within ancient ruins. He ventured out during his free hours, exploring forbidden places, uncovering relics, and studying ruins abandoned by time. Within these tombs of lost knowledge, he unearthed grim truths. The Demonoids, a race long sealed away in his previous life, were stirring. These creatures, forged from dark magic and hatred, had once brought humanity to the brink of extinction. Their seal had not been held. Over the centuries, they had grown clever and cunning. Rather than attack with brute force, they now manipulated the world from within, disguising themselves as nobles, merchants, and even scholars. Their goal was not conquest, but infiltration, eroding civilization from the inside until it collapsed under its own weight. Matthias, frustrated by the ignorance of those around him, decided to act. He led a mission beyond the kingdom's protected lands to hunt a dragon, a creature spoken of only in myth, believed invincible. The dragon, ancient and malicious, had awakened, drawn by the chaotic energy in the world. Slaying such a beast would prove beyond doubt the severity of the coming threat and Matthias's power. The battle was long and brutal. Matthias analyzed the dragon's movements, studying its breath patterns and mana flow. He countered with precision, casting spells mid-flight and dodging with grace honed through generations. He used ancient incantations forgotten to the world, striking with force that cracked mountains and lit the sky with fire. When the dragon fell, its death shook the region. The Academy and the kingdom could no longer ignore what they had witnessed. His actions caught the attention of the royal family. Matthias was summoned to the palace, not in chains but in curiosity. The king, old and weary, listened as Matthias explained the truth. Monsters were not just acting on instinct. A hidden war was unfolding. The Demonoids were moving. The kingdom, soft and slow, would not survive what was coming. Skepticism greeted his warnings, but the memory of the slain dragon hung in the air. As a compromise, Matthias was permitted to launch an expedition to verify his claims. Accompanied by Luri and Alma, he led a group to the ancient city buried beneath the capital. Deep within, they discovered a chamber sealed by primeval magic. Matthias broke the seals with ease and revealed weapons, manuscripts, and sigils left behind by sages of old. What they found confirmed everything. The Demonoids had long planned their return. The chamber contained fragments of their language, encrypted commands to infiltrate human society, and even maps outlining current strongholds. Matthias used the findings to create new magical devices, barrier crystals that absorbed curses, tracking runes to detect disguised enemies, and armor imbued with elemental immunity. Returning to the academy, Matthias began teaching his methods in secret. He knew time was short. He rebuilt ancient battle formations and combat spells suited for real warfare, not tournaments. Soon, those who had mocked him began to train under him in earnest. What began as whispers grew into legend. Students told of a boy with the crest of failure who had killed a dragon, read the language of the ancients, and fought monsters with the ease of a seasoned general. Yet none of this was enough. In one province, a village fell overnight. The army that had been sent to guard it returned with half their number, the rest torn apart or turned mad. Matthias rushed to the site and found the culprit, a demonoid masquerading as a wandering priest. The battle was devastating. The enemy wielded curses that warped space and mind. Matthias, drawing on all his knowledge, sealed the creature with an incantation he had once believed lost to time. In the demon's final moments, it whispered of a master, the true commander of the demonoid resurgence. Matthias returned to the capital, grim-faced and determined. He addressed the court, warning that the time for caution had ended. War had already begun. The demonoids would strike not with armies, but through lies, sabotage, and corruption. If the world wished to survive, it needed to discard its pride, its flawed traditions, and its ignorance. It needed to be remembered. The king, now convinced, agreed to Matthias's proposal to found a new magical training institution not bound by ancient nobility or faulty doctrine. This new academy would teach the truth, how to fight, how to think, and how to survive. Matthias would lead it, not in title, but in action. And as the first day of instruction began, the wind shifted. The era of decline had ended. The age of awakening had begun. But in the shadows, the true enemy stirred. The academy that Matthias had helped establish grew rapidly in influence and prestige, but not from noble names or royal decree. Its worth was proven through action. Students no longer learned magic through outdated texts and false theories. Instead, they practiced real combat, learned mana efficiency, and trained for the world that now teetered on the edge of ruin. Matthias moved as both a mentor and warrior, never remaining long in one place. His eyes, sharpened by millennia of wisdom, saw threats before others could comprehend them. He traveled between regions, constantly studying the land, reading the flow of mana in the air, and listening to the unnatural silences that always preceded calamity. His fears were justified. Reports began to pour in of towns losing contact with the capital, farms consumed by beasts that left no trace, and trade routes cursed by invisible forces that drained the life from merchants overnight. Matthias knew this was not random violence. The Demonoids were probing the realm's defenses, testing responses, and seeking weak points. Their cunning had evolved in their long slumber. This was not a race of wild creatures, but generals and tacticians who operated in secret while humanity slumbered in ignorance. Matthias led numerous missions, often alone, deep into areas others dared not tread. He uncovered ruined altars stained with demonic blood, underground temples used for sacrifices to forgotten gods, and ancient symbols of war rekindled by sinister hands. He mapped their locations, deciphered the encrypted language hidden in the symbols, and returned to construct anti-demonic wards across villages and cities. Slowly, he built a defense network that had not existed in centuries. Meanwhile, Luri and Alma had grown into formidable warriors under his tutelage. Luri, with her rune-infused swordsmanship, struck with speed and force far beyond her peers. Alma's precision as an archer had evolved into a form of artistry. Her arrows, guided by mana sensors and layered spells, could pierce enchanted armor and disrupt magical shields. Together, the trio became a symbol of hope in a land teetering toward despair. Towns they visited felt protected. Armies they supported survived impossible odds. But it wasn't enough. The Demonoids finally revealed their first true assault. A massive force emerged from the southern wastelands, not as monsters but as a conquering army. Intelligent, coordinated, and wearing stolen faces of humans, they took over an entire duchy in a matter of days. Communication spells failed. The knights sent to investigate were overwhelmed. The air itself warped near their encampments. The kingdom faced the unthinkable, an invasion it did not understand and could not repel. Matthias acted immediately. With his companions and a group of elite trainees from the new academy, he marched toward the front lines. En route, he intercepted refugee caravans, families shattered, cities burned, and officials reduced to sobbing shells of pride. The Demonoids used not just brute strength but also illusions, curses, and mind-altering toxins to break resistance. They turned humans against each other, sowed chaos within command structures, and shattered morale from within. Before launching a counter-offensive, Matthias infiltrated the heart of the occupied duchy. Disguised and cloaked in ancient concealment magic, he moved through ruined towns and corrupted forests until he reached the stronghold of the Demonoid general. From the shadows, he observed their operations, noting their language, command hierarchy, and magical tools of war. The general, a towering creature wrapped in obsidian armor and cursed flames, directed forces with chilling precision. Matthias learned that this was not their only stronghold, merely one of several staging points for a larger invasion. Armed with this knowledge, Matthias returned to the army and laid out a strategy that defied conventional logic. They would not storm the enemy's gates in a glorious charge, but dismantle them from within. He divided his forces into small units trained in silent movement and sudden strikes. He led a detachment to destroy the Demonoids' mana supply lines, large obsidian spires that drew corrupted energy from underground ley lines. Without them, the creature's magic weakened. Their transformations faltered, and their illusions broke. The first victory was small but symbolic. A fortress reclaimed, a cursed spring purified. A noble family once turned into monsters was given peace. As word spread, morale surged. The kingdom's scattered armies began to rally behind Matthias, adopting his methods, studying his techniques, and preparing for the war to come. But the Demonoids retaliated. In a calculated move, they sent one of their high-ranking elites into the heart of the capital, cloaked in human form, to assassinate the royal family and plunge the nation into leaderless chaos. The attack was swift and brutal. It took everything Matthias had to intercept the assassin in time. Their duel took place atop the royal palace under a blood-red sky, magic screaming through the air and tearing stone from the towers. The Demonoid wielded forbidden arts that bent time and space, splitting illusions into reality and blinding the senses. But Matthias had seen such tricks before, long ago. His mind cut through the deception. With calculated fury, he delivered the final blow, sealing the enemy's soul in a crystal to prevent resurrection. The capital survived, but barely. The king, wounded and weakened, handed over full command of the defense to Matthias, a mantle Matthias never sought but knew he must bear. In the months that followed, Matthias led campaign after campaign. He revived the lost magic of barrier construction, creating shields over cities that reflected dark mana. He forged weapons that drained the life force of demonic enemies, allowing even low-ranked soldiers to stand a chance. He deployed scouts empowered with magic detection, countering the infiltration tactics the Demonoids relied upon. Across the realm, a shift began. The world that had once fallen asleep to its past was now awake, burning with the will to survive. But Matthias could feel the end approaching. The Demonoid leader, the one whispered in the dying breaths of countless enemies, was drawing near. This being, far beyond any individual enemy thus far, had awakened fully. Once sealed by the sages of the ancient world, it had regained its strength in the forgotten dimensions between life and void. It sought not just dominion, but the unraveling of human will itself. Matthias gathered his allies. He knew that this final confrontation would not be won by numbers, nor by brute strength. They would strike at the heart of the Demonoid's resurgence, a fortress hidden between dimensions, anchored to the ruins of the first civilization. Reaching it required the use of a dimensional gate, buried beneath the oldest ruins in the kingdom. With great effort, Matthias repaired the gate, drawing power from ancient ley lines and forgotten chants that once bridged worlds. The battle that followed defied mortal understanding. The fortress was alive, shifting with thought and hunger. Walls moved like flesh. Hallways whispered. Time fractured in places, sending soldiers glimpsing their own deaths. At the center sat the Demonoid king, a creature of void and flame, its form constantly shifting between countless faces, each a soul it had consumed. Matthias stepped forward, alone. He ordered the others to hold back the spawn pouring from the fortress while he faced the king. Their duel transcended the physical realm. Magic twisted the sky, ruptured the ground, and echoed across dimensions. Every blow was a clash of philosophies, order against chaos, will against despair, and future against oblivion. The Demonoid king struck with fear, dreams, and illusions. Matthias responded with resolve, knowledge, and unshakable purpose. As his strength waned and his wounds deepened, Matthias unleashed the final spell he had developed, a reincarnation-linked invocation that bound his soul to the foundations of the world, casting away the very source of the Demonoid's immortality. In doing so, he destroyed the fortress, shattered the king's essence, and erased the threat from all of existence. The explosion that followed lit the horizon like a second sun. When the dust settled, the fortress was gone, the dimensional gate closed, and silence returned. Matthias stood, barely breathing, body broken but soul triumphant. His companions rushed to him, tears staining their battle-worn faces. But Matthias only smiled faintly. He had done what he was meant to do. In the weeks that followed, the world began to rebuild. The academy became a central beacon for all magical learning. The corrupted lands were cleansed, slowly returned to life through Matthias's spells and the knowledge he had left behind. The Crest system remained, but no longer did society judge one by its design. Instead, the focus turned to heart, discipline, and understanding. Matthias recovered, though the battle had left him scarred beyond healing. He refused titles, wealth, and kingship. Instead, he returned to teaching, guiding a new generation of mages to surpass even his own achievements. His students spread across the world, carrying with them the flame of true knowledge. In quiet moments, Matthias would look to the sky, remembering the world he had once left behind and the world he had helped shape anew. He had been the strongest sage, not because of a crest or a crown, but because he refused to accept limits. He dared to rewrite fate, defy decline, and walk alone into the shadows when no one else would. And in doing so, he reminded the world that even the weakest crest, in the hands of the right soul, could become its greatest strength.